She was never meant to be queen. There were no early lessons about ruling an empire. No preparation for power. No expectation that one day the weight of a crown would rest on her head. And yet, one quiet decision made by someone else changed her life forever. This is the story of Queen Elizabeth II. Not the crown, not the ceremony, but the woman behind 70 years of duty. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor was born in 1926. At the time, she stood far from the line of succession. Her uncle, Edward VIII, was expected to rule. Her father was never supposed to be king. And Elizabeth herself was raised to be a supporting figure, not a sovereign. Her childhood, though privileged, was relatively quiet by royal standards. She was educated at home, surrounded by family, animals, and tradition. There was structure, discipline, and an unspoken understanding of responsibility. But nothing that suggested destiny. Everything changed in 1936. Edward VIII made the unthinkable choice to abdicate the throne for love. There were no celebrations, no grand announcements for the family, only shock, uncertainty, and silence. Elizabeth was just 10 years old when her future was rewritten. Her father became King George VI, a man burdened by a role he never sought. And overnight, Elizabeth became the heir presumptive. From that moment on, her life stopped being entirely her own. Not publicly, but privately, completely. Her father struggled with the pressure of the crown. He battled anxiety, self-doubt, and the relentless weight of responsibility. Elizabeth watched closely. She learned early that the crown does not protect you. It exposes you. That lesson would stay with her forever. During the Second World War, Elizabeth experienced a rare glimpse of normality. She trained as a mechanic and driver, determined to contribute rather than observe from a distance. It was one of the few times in her life when duty aligned with choice. But freedom, for Elizabeth, was always temporary. In 1947, she married Philip Mountbatten, a man strong-willed, independent, and deeply in love with her. Their marriage was often described as traditional. In reality, it was complicated. Philip was asked to walk behind her, to give up his surname, to sacrifice his ambitions. And Elizabeth had to accept that love, for her, would always come second to duty. In 1952, while on a royal tour in Kenya, Elizabeth received the news that changed everything. Her father had died. She was 25 years old. She left for the trip as a princess. She returned as a queen. There was no time to grieve, no moment to hesitate. The crown did not ask if she was ready. It simply arrived. Her coronation, broadcast to millions, marked the beginning of a reign that would span decades of global change. Empires fell. Nations redefined themselves. Technology reshaped daily life. And through it all, Elizabeth remained. She ruled during the Cold War, the collapse of the British Empire, the rise of television.
At this critical moment in our history, we will certainly lose the trust and respect of the world.
And the birth of the digital age. While the world moved faster than ever before, she became a symbol of constancy. Not warmth, not passion, but stability. Her role demanded restraint, silence, neutrality. She did not share opinions. She did not explain herself. She simply stayed. Behind palace walls, however, life was far from simple. Her sister Margaret struggled under the same rigid expectations that Elizabeth had learned to accept. Personal happiness was often sacrificed for appearances. Later, the next generation brought its own storms. The marriage of Charles and Diana captivated the world, and then shattered in public view. Scandals followed. Criticism grew louder. And for the first time, the monarchy felt fragile. Elizabeth was accused of being distant, out of touch, too reserved for a changing world. But she did not abandon her principles. She adapted slowly, cautiously, without ever fully surrendering the distance her role required. As years passed, her image transformed. From a young woman in a heavy crown to an elderly figure in bright coats and quiet smiles. Familiar, predictable, enduring. Prince Philip's death marked one of the most visibly human moments of her reign. Seated alone at his funeral, masked and silent, she became a symbol not of power, but of loss. In her final years, she reduced her public appearances, yet remained devoted to her role until the very end. Even as her strength faded, her sense of duty did not. When Queen Elizabeth II died in 2022, the world paused. Not because a monarch had passed, but because an era had ended. For 70 years, she carried a responsibility she never chose. She did not rule through charisma or force. She ruled through presence. In a world defined by noise, she embodied restraint. In times of uncertainty, she offered continuity. She never asked for the crown, but she carried it longer than anyone else in history. And that is her legacy.